Phoenix Down Radio is on the air.
Welcome everybody to Phoenix Down Radio, episode number 167. I'm your host Klauss Nightbringer, and joining me as always is Seyrr Timono. Seyrr, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, we are maintaining existence, though it's a little tricky some days.
Some days. But we're here. It's another Saturday night. We're live at twitch.tv/Phoenix Down Radio with another episode. And
you made it through the week. That is a victory to be celebrated. Damn right.
Exactly. What have you been up to?
Oh, a bit of futzing around with crafting, a lot of doing stuff with housing. Spender finally got some free time and decided he wanted to work on a shared house we have, and that made me decide I wanted to start working on my apartment. It turns out that glitching sub-furnishings is a lot less difficult than I expected. And now I have a cute little painting studio.
Where you paint happy little bushes and...
Well, right now I've got like a full-scale picture of the firmament on the easel, but... there's a picture of like Reunion. I think that has some bushes in it. There we go. Happy little tents and happy little migratory tribes. And there's a little Castiri just for us. It's a secret.
Yes. And don't forget the happy little sons.
They don't seem very happy, honestly.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, a bit of that. Mostly crafting, gathering, and housing-related type stuff.
Have you been on the lookout for any, or gone in on any of the lotteries for any houses that might be available?
I am actually pretty happy with the location of stuff.
Okay.
Like, we've got one in the Lavender Beds. It's the one that's, like, right out on the water, the medium one. And then my cottage is right next to that one. So, like, there's somewhere we could get slightly better spots, but the fact that we have things like right next to each other, it's really convenient that way.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I haven't been playing a ton of the game. I've been going into it a little bit every day, taking care of the dailies and stuff. But I am trying to grind out a little bit of Crystalline Conflict every day, try and get 1 or 2 matches in. And I'm stuck at Silver. I've been going back and forth between Silver 2 and Silver 3, depending on how good of a team I can get on with. I mean, today was a good day. I had 2 wins, so that's nice.
Yeah, there comes a certain point in lots of games like this where it's not just about individual skill, but about like, hey, does everyone know what everyone else is doing well enough that you can kind of start coordinating without having to explicitly say it?
Yeah, it's learning
like where you have that kind of sense of like, okay, they're going to need an opening for this, so I want to start pushing over there and they can come. Like, it's that level of thing, and it's hard to develop.
Yeah, it's really about getting, understanding what your role is, and making sure that you're able to handle it. I always wanted to be the guy that was pushing stuff forward, but as a bard, that's not a good idea.
No.
I'm squishy and I lose potency if I'm up too far up. So
you could always try a different role then.
I'm really enjoying bard though.
I mean, so I know at least a couple people who I know one who is playing warrior exclusively in Crystalline Conflict because he doesn't really like warrior in PvE stuff, and so it's like, okay, this is the only way he's going to level it and not hate it.
And I actually have played warrior in prior iterations of PvP, like in the larger scale stuff, out on the Reunion and out on the other places, Shatter and
the Frontlines matches.
Frontline, yeah, there we go. And it's not bad. And I might jump in on some of that, but I really do like sitting back and just kind of, going pew pew. And yeah. I really enjoy when I get the LB off and everybody gets a damage boost for the next 30 seconds or so, and just watching them melt as you're pushing the crystal forward. That's always really nice. So
yeah. But the big thing I would say is the matches go fast. There's not a lot of commitment. And if, hey, you are kind of feeling like, hey, I want to be a bit more aggressive, pushy type thing, try something else for just a match or two.
Yep. The other cool thing that happened this week is I got together with friends last Saturday, and we got together and we did some in-person D&D, which is very nice. Hung out at one of the members' houses there, and we DM'd there. One guy couldn't make it, so we ended up having my tablet up in Discord, so they could see all of us. We could see them. It worked perfectly, so it was very nice for that.
Yeah, starting to get some of those in-person things back, which still feels a little weird from time to time, but
yeah, but
it's nice.
Made sure that everybody was, feeling good. I actually did take a COVID test beforehand just to make sure, because I don't want to get anybody sick, because I'd been kind of feeling
absolutely
under the weather. Mainly, I think it was like cold or allergy related. So
I do wonder if it's ever going to get to a point where things do feel vaguely normal. It's not quite there yet.
Has there ever been a normal?
There were times I could at least lie to myself effectively. And you know what? Sometimes that's the best you're going to get.
Sometimes that's okay. Because you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you.
Okay, so we're back to lying to ourselves. Kidding. My self-esteem is doing better these days.
Which, it's always nice to see, so... awesome to hear. Let's go ahead and throw out a shout out and a thank you to our Patreon producers, Nick Nar, Aurori, and Tibiant. We greatly appreciate you guys' support. So let's jump into gaming community news.
I keep running into Aurori over in Old Charlotte, and it's always nice to see you, Aurori.
Yeah, she likes to hang out
Every time she sees me, she'll wave. It's really nice. It's like, oh, I'd be noticed.
And I actually had it where I was in game one day, and she just messaged me again and said hi, and was like, haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're doing well. I'm like, oh, that was very nice of you. Thank you. It's greatly appreciated that you guys are thinking of us. So thank you. We do appreciate it.
Like, our community is small, but it's very tight knit, and I really appreciate that.
Yes. So in the gaming community news, announcing the announcement of an upcoming Final Fantasy VII Remake announcement.
Oh my gosh. How many layers deep was that?
Too many. But, I mean, realistically, it is what it is. So, in a, I'll go ahead and copy and paste the article from Video Games Chronicle. According to director Tetsuya Nomura, who shared this news during a Japanese live stream focused on Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier, that mobile game, the Battle Royale game that they have, June's announcements could include the reveal of a Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, since Square Enix has previously indicated that it would like to share details on the sequel during the anniversary year, being this is the 35th anniversary of Final Fantasy, the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, and lots of stuff going on.
Feels a little weird that he has to be that cagey about it. Like, is it he's not really supposed to be saying this, or is it things are still enough in flux that he's not certain? I do wonder.
There's a lot of stuff in flux. I mean, if you've been listening to any of the gaming news out there, E3 has been canceled for this year, so there will not even be a digital version of it. So a lot of the companies are kind of scrambling to figure out how they're going to get their announcements out there, whether they're going to partner up with some of the other organizations that are doing some of the smaller announcements, like Jeff Keighley and the Video Game Awards. They're doing a summer announcement series. Some of the publishers are choosing to do it themselves, and then others are just, throwing out information out there as they see fit. So
part of me is surprised that it took this long. E3's been in a weird place for ages.
Yeah. But being this is the Final Fantasy 35th anniversary, there are a number of other expected announcements coming up in June as well. I'm going to copy and paste a link from GameSpot for this one. We talked about the Final Fantasy VII one in the previous story. We talked about Final Fantasy 16 in the last episode, where there was talk that we would be seeing a new trailer coming up in June, when with Yoshida talking it with the Uniqlo people in their little pamphlet they have in stores. The remake of Final Fantasy IX was part of the 2021 NVIDIA GeForce leak. We've talked about that as well. But so that's something that we might get an announcement on, as well as in that same leak, a Final Fantasy Tactics remaster. So could we potentially see something about a new Final Fantasy Tactics game coming out for these the current generation consoles?
Yeah, we have had a couple strategy offerings from Square Enix recently. Triangle Strategy for the Switch, the announced strategy RPG Diofield Chronicle. So it does seem like that's still a market they want to tap into.
And I mean, Yoshida has said in the past, how much of a fan he is of Tactics Ogre. So he really does enjoy the tactics style games. So it's definitely something we could see coming out of Square Enix yet announced this year.
Yeah, lots of speculation at this point.
And speaking of Naoki Yoshida, he had a very in-depth interview with Game Informer recently. If you get a chance to check out that article, I highly recommend it. It's a very good read about his climb through game development and how he got to where he is now. A bit of it, one piece in there that I really enjoyed, and then a lot of other news outlets picked up on, was the fact that the first game that he actually was able to lead and create on his own ended up getting shelved when Square and Enix merged together. So that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. He was working on an RPG that had a very interesting gaming mechanic. I urge you to read up on that and go through that and just kind of learn a little bit more about the guy who saved Final Fantasy XIV and potentially Square Enix.
Yeah. It's always fun to see those little tidbits, those reminders that's like, oh no, it's gone through a lot of this other stuff as well.
Exactly.
Like, it's not just, okay, came out of nowhere, became this big leader. Like, the fact that he was able to go in and propose this audacious plan, it wasn't completely out of nowhere. Man's got a fairly impressive history.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that he got his start working out at of Hudson Soft. Working on Super Bomberman.
The Super Bomberman has been referred to a couple times. I remember someone pointing out, I think it was at Super Bomberman 2, where there was a story of like light and dark things. I was like, clearly that was what was going to happen with Hydaelyn and Zodiark.
Oh, of course.
Turned out not to be the case, but it was made for some hilarious speculation.
Well, and you can kind of see a little bit of the influence of Super Bomberman in one of the Crystalline Conflict maps, where you got those bombs that jump out and blow up everything in their paths.
Oh yes, the one at the active volcano.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, really adds a fun tactical element, trying to dodge into things. That I've had a couple moves where I managed to bait someone into the line of a bomb because they just did not seem to notice it was going on. They were so busy going after me. Such a great feeling. Yeah,
I really don't like, that's my least favorite map of the three, honestly. But
Palestrea is my favorite, but
yeah,
I'll work with what I got.
That's the one that looks like it's from the Studium, right?
Yeah.
And then the one that's from the Sea of Clouds is actually kind of interesting as well. You just got to be careful when the winds
I don't like
pick
it
up
as much.
If you kick on your shield when the winds are about to kick up, then you don't worry about taking damage.
So or get yourself to a feather and get some bonuses.
Those chocobo things?
Yeah, if you get tossed into the air over a chocobo feather, you don't take damage and you get some bonuses from the feather.
Oh, interesting.
It's a tactical whatnot.
I've just avoided that, and I suppose there's also some tactile things with little orbs that are dropped from the bombs. Correct?
Yeah. If you start snagging those, you get attack bonuses.
Okay, but don't you take damage from that as well?
Nope.
I thought you did.
Only if you're getting caught in the bomb blast.
Fair enough.
So don't do that.
Don't do that, because that's a big bomb. Big bada boom.
Oh, so anyways.
And then the last thing this week was the NA release of the Uniqlo and Final Fantasy crossover. And yeah, that was a thing.
Predictable, really.
The thing of it is, a lot of that stuff was sold out before it was even announced to be open and up. Square Enix went out on and Final Fantasy went out on Twitter about 9 o'clock Central Time, about 10 o'clock Eastern, saying that the crossover is live, that all the stuff is up, but the actual storefront was open and available well before that. So a lot of people had already gone through and sniped all the good stuff. The Final Fantasy 14 shirt was not even available. At all.
This is always a thing when you've got a collaborative one like that. If one of the partners has their own idea of how they want things to work, it can really complicate matters, and there's not necessarily a lot you can do in the moment about it.
But I mean, there are still a few shirts available. I did actually go through and take a peek because there's a few that I still want, and I have marked on their site.
Yep.
But
so it looks like there's still some left for Final Fantasy 6 through 10, as well as 15 and 16, but they're almost exclusively small, extra small, or double extra small sizes, and 1 or 2 medium sizes throughout. But
so if
the
you're
larger sizes and
big, you might be able to get a shirt.
Yeah, the larger sizes, anything from the PS2 era, as well as the older NES stuff.
Yep, 1, 2, 3. 11, 12, 13, and 14 completely sold out.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those were really nice designs, and I'm hoping that we get restocks on some of it.
I also do wonder if some of this was I know that a lot of game players tend a bit towards the larger sizes. I certainly remember at FanFest where they ran out of the extra large shirts almost immediately, but I think had small shirts until the very last day of it. So I'm wondering if the production maybe just didn't necessarily take into account the sizing spread among the fan base.
Yeah, you saying that us US gamers are fat?
I'm not saying it.
Well, I mean, if
this
you
is
take
nowhere near the most controversial thing I've said. You should ask Moose; he could tell you stories.
And I mean, if you take us as a sample size, we are not small. I mean, I was able to get 4 different shirts. I picked up Final Fantasy V, 7, 8, and 15. So
I did. I just didn't even worry about doing it.
Yeah. I figured, you know what, it was worth a shot to try and get some, but I grabbed what I could and ran.
Demand was always going to be huge. Like there was going to be a lot of people who are interested in this, and I couldn't imagine the supply was going to be that large. So,
well, I mean, the great thing about a lot of this stuff is T-shirts can be reprinted. So
there is that.
Hopefully, we get to see some more of those. So yeah, that is our game and community news that I was able to pick up for this week. And then now,
yeah, lots of speculation, lots of stuff that people are looking forward to. Plenty of buzz, but yeah, especially with stuff like E3 being canceled, it's a little bit up in the air as to when we're going to get to find out about some of these.
I'm really hoping we hear at least about Final Fantasy 16, maybe get a release date. And then maybe just to see a little bit about what the developers are doing with Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Because those 2 games right there are probably going to bring in a lot of revenue for Square Enix. So they're probably the most anticipated games, at least of the genre.
Most definitely.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out. We have a spoiler alert. We are going to be talking about patch 6.1, the storyline with that. It's been a little while. I think we're a good 6 weeks out from when it's dropped. So
yeah, had some time for thoughts to percolate, for people to make Istola memes.
God,
so many memes.
Froth and foam, froth and foam.
She really wants us to never talk about that again.
Like I said,
I'm not going to get that, but she wants it.
Like I said in the pre-show, I got a pressure washer and a foam cannon, so we did my own froth and foam today.
Oh,
as Seyrr so eloquently reminded me of that, so it was perfect.
That's one of those childhood things that you're never going to live down.
Exactly. So Seyrr, since you were kind enough to put the notes together, why don't you go ahead and lead this discussion?
All right. So it started, of course, with Tataru giving us a new outfit. Does seem to be the standard thing for any type of, say, we had that for Shadowbringers. Yeah, just in general. So we do get that new one that we've seen in a lot of the previews. But after saving the entire universe, all life from the Endsinger, it started with us considering Emmett Selk's words and about things like the ruins beneath the bounty as one of the first places that we might start. And so, with that as our lead, we head over to Thavnair to start checking into it from Tataru's advice, start checking into the local taverns for rumors. And we do find out about legends around the Thavnarian ruler Alzadal III, said to have made a pact with dragons, to have journeyed to another world and returned with fabulous riches. And his most famous legend is that of Alzadal's legacy, a undersea treasure vault that treasure hunters have been searching for generations. Many have gone in search of it, few have returned. Those who have are like ones who didn't really get anywhere. Anyone who seemed to have gotten anywhere towards it seems to just never came back.
Now, if I can interject real quick, this Alzadal, he was the one who also, that's where all of these treasure map vaults come from as well, correct?
Sort of?
Or something similar, because it's one of those things where it's taken, the treasure is in another plane, another sphere. It's not
right.
really...
So actually, if you're in Thavnair, at the city entrance, if you hang a left, you'll find a gate much like those of the shifting canals of Uznair, and that one appears to be another treasure vault. Like, there's a different family that's discussed for that, and they actually just talk about that they're allowing people in for something or another. But it does seem like there's kind of a Thavnarian trend in general of these fabulous treasure vaults.
It's just how important you are and how big your vault is going to depend on a number of pieces.
And
so, okay.
Alzadal, Alzadal III, one of the satraps, legendary, as I said, supposed to have gone to other worlds and come back with fabulous treasure. All sorts of legends about him, and Alzadal's legacy, this vault being the big one. So with that rumor under our belt, we do encounter in the bazaars of Radzatan a merchant, along with a street urchin accomplice, selling a treasure map that they claim will lead you to the legacy. You're highly suspicious, coordinated, talking it up. Oh, with that treasure I could feed my sister's bellies, yada, yada, yada. That manages to pull on the heartstrings of Estinian, who puts up the fabulous price demanded for the map. Though he does mention afterwards that he's not quite as stupid about money anymore, and he knows it's likely that this is going to be a thing for that, but also that he pretty much had felt bad for the kid and wanted to at least to get him some money.
Mm-hmm. Which is good.
Yeah. So we've been pointed to this treasure under the bounty. We've had a map practically fall into our hands. Might as well go treasure hunting.
Right?
Yeah. It's a fun diversion. We're going around with Estinian. Like, he kind of just tools around figuring out his next thing to do. So, you know what? We're going to go. We're just going to have a nice basic adventure. And as we're preparing to set out, the accomplice boy comes out to the seaside to beg us not to throw away our lives on this. He's heard all the tales about those who never come back from it, sees us as feeling a little bad about what he thinks is ripping us off, and so doesn't want us to die in the process. And while we still want to investigate it, we reassure him that we're not going to go just the two of us, that we'll bring some friends along to make it safer. One short recruitment drive, we do have another 3 of our former scions in the group. Grahatia, of course, leaps at the chance to join us on an adventure, pretty much the big thing he's always wanted to do. Ishtola is intrigued by the tales of Alzadal's travel to another world and wondering if there might be something in there that would help her with her goal of crossing over to other reflections.
I wonder why she wants to go to other reflections.
Oh, she's talked all about it, and in fact, she does in some of the little side scenes in this patch. She does talk a little bit more about her motivations for that, not just for the people she wants to see, but her relentless drive to understand more, to tease apart these mysteries.
No, I mean, it 100% makes sense. We've already established that we can travel to some of the other shards. You know, maybe it would be a good idea to see, you know, the other 7 that still have.
Well, she's just curious.
Yeah, she's just curious.
I mean, my understanding is that curiosity in cats generally works out, so. And then we have slightly unexpected Urianger, who is on a information gathering mission from the Loporits, who apparently want to know all about treasure vaults. Treasure map aficionados may have seen the fruits of their research already. And so, given that we're investigating a treasure vault, he wants to come along and learn a little bit more about their secrets, how they're made, other stuff like that, so that he can report to the Loporits and give them advice. Little bit of an unexpected angle there, but it was fun to have him in for that. And so, with that, we sail a chartered boat out to one of the islands dotting the bounty, and we make our way into the Vault of Alzadal. For those of you who spent time in Final Fantasy XI, lots of callbacks there, all sorts of references to salvage, to various things from the Treasures of Hot Ergen expansion, couple bits of PTSD for me.
A little bit.
Never again. Never again.
I mean, at least there were no Calibri stealing your sushi.
Yeah. But those gates. And it was actually kind of fun, again, like having the Final Fantasy XI experience, giving a good idea of like, okay, this is what this is doing, and so this is what you're going to want to be doing. Like, it made it a little bit easier to figure out the mechanics. We've talked before about Final Fantasy XIV being kind of that theme park version of dipping into the other Final Fantasies a bit, and it's always fun when you get to call back some of that old knowledge and figure out how you can apply it here.
Definitely.
And in the deepest chamber of Alzadal's legacy, we find what looks like a Honish alchemical furnace. But before we can investigate it, we are interrupted by a very distressed Varshan. Varshan, you may remember, being the mammoth piloted by Vitra.
Yep.
After a little bit of uncomfortable admitting that, yes, we destroyed all the Guardians that it turned out he knew full well was there, because this place is under the guard of the satrap of Radzat-Han. Awkward. Yeah. I do not know anyone who did not try to throw Ishtola under the bus in that cutscene. So good.
I didn't for once, but it was.
Go back and watch it with doing that. It is comedic gold.
Yeah, I did watch some of the other playthroughs, yes. So yes.
But Varshan does open the furnace to reveal the true treasure that the vault keeps locked. Though it's not protecting this treasure from the world, it is protecting the world from this treasure, because what is inside that furnace is a stable passage to the 13th, the world we know better as the Void. In explaining its presence there, Varshan tells us a tale of his sister Azdaha, who in the waning days of the Allagan Empire was caught in an Allagan Void Gate and was lost in the 13th. And after discussing this a bit more, we do return to Radzat-Han so they can start on the process of replacing all of those Guardians and traps that we had destroyed.
Yeah. Let's talk about the dungeon a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite interesting. Did you go through it with the trust?
I always do my first one with the trust, so I have time to look around.
Yep. It was interesting to watch their reactions, especially Stola, talking about, all the different things going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think I went with Stola, Urianger, and Graha. I think I skipped out on Mystinian with that one.
I swap Estinian for Urianger, and that's the party I went with.
Okay.
I had Graha as my healer.
Okay, that makes sense. And you were the tank?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, but really atmospheric. The bit where, like, for instance, it described the runes on the map glowing and like bringing bridges into existence or dispelling illusions or things like that really added a lot to that whole, like, okay, maybe this treasure map is the real thing. It's breaking the wards on all this.
Until we get to that one point where it actually detects an intruder, and then it sets off all of the vault's security on us.
I mean, that also has all the hallmarks of a treasure hunt.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, that entire section, of course, modeled after the Alzadal ruins, undersea ruins from Final Fantasy XI. And so, like, from those salvage runs, from all the other stuff, I was like, okay, target the gate, smash the gate immediately. It's just going to keep summoning stuff.
Yep. Though, I mean, fortunately, in 14, they limit it to, I think there's 3 summonings on it, is about all you would get.
But if you are quick on it, especially if you're doing this with like a regular party, you can cut off the number of ads by burning it down very quickly.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was an interesting mechanic, as well as, I have to say, the final boss mechanic had some very interesting moves, especially that one where we end up getting tied up in the silks, and then we get spun around like tops, and we have to control our path. That was kind of interesting.
That was a really interesting mechanic, especially seeing, like, okay, the spikes shift up. Mm-hmm. There was a couple during the second round of it where it's like, okay, curving this way. Oh no, he's leaping for that. Okay, I need to dodge out of that while also doing this. Trying to get, at a couple points, I pulled off a very slick timing dodge on my first time through that I have not been able to replicate since. Or having, like, the ones. So just like all of the various fabrics going around, it had a really cool feel to it, especially given the whole traditional fabrics base for Thavnair. I would really like that they were able to integrate those kind of fabric-based mechanics into the fight.
Yep, and it made, like I said, it basically felt like a dungeon based around the treasure map dungeons.
Yeah. Like, it really good, strong, unifying theme. I did love after the second round of the fabric spin, how Ishtola just starts making very clipped comments about how now this has to die. Like, she is just very displeased after that second one.
Also disoriented.
Bit of both.
Yeah. I think she was about to hurl.
Yeah, Ishtola does not suffer that type of thing. But yeah, so fun mechanics. The theming was really on point. It really did have that adventure treasure hunting feel to it. So, and I love dungeons that aren't just like a narrow where you have like bits that feel kind of overworld exploratory. Hullbreaker Isle was always a big one for me because of that.
Yep. But a cool little bit that
which is also a treasure hunting one, thinking about it.
Yeah, we were searching for
Mistbeard's treasure.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of those treasure hunting dungeons I just really like. There's something about the feel of them.
But then once we get back and, you know, they order new security for the vault, you know, because we kind of destroyed it all. Whoops.
These things happen, and it's not like we knew that this was an actively monitored site.
Yeah, I mean, we told them the reason we went there, and because we wanted to make sure that, you know, we could try and help some of the people within Radzat-Han who could, you know, benefit from this treasure. So
yeah, that was a big thing, especially Estinian's motivations to get that treasure and help restore restoring Thavnair and Radzat-Han.
Yep, and the great part about it is Virtua agrees, and they start to take some of the actual treasure out, and they are going to figure out how to utilize it to better the situation for everybody in Thavnair and Radzat-Han.
Yeah, like it kind of feels like, oh right, we have this. I guess we should do something with it. This seems like a good time.
Yeah, it made sense, you know, well, because I'm sure. I mean, you think about it, a dragon, he's been sitting on this hoard for thousands of years.
Yeah, adding to it throughout, I'm sure.
Yeah, and with it, he's like, well, I don't know what we're gonna really need to use this for. And then we basically just give him an idea, and he's like, that's a fucking great idea. Let's do it.
Yeah. Plus, also the acknowledgement that's like, yes, we went ahead and saved the world and removed this threat, but there was still a lot of damage done. A lot of people died. There was a lot of suffering. Stuff doesn't bounce back just like that. We've had it like with the Doman reconstruction or with Alamigo, where it's like, okay, like the victory has been won. Now for the hard part of rebuilding.
So now we're kind of going to be doing the same thing in Thavnair. And I thought that this next bit where the story went was very, very sweet. And it the fact that it brought us in on a little bit of the planning stages as to what they're going to do, how they're going to go about it, and what they want to call it. The fact that, you know, they ask us, you know, who should we, you know, name this after, you know, to bring up.
Well, we're not quite there yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Because we do, the first thing that we actually do is to go out and talk to all the various people of Thavnair to learn a bit more about their situation. Like, we know that the people are struggling, but it's one thing to say, okay, stuff's not doing well. It's another to try to find out the details. What isn't working? What is working for people? Yeah, like, one of the things we found was that the people of Palaka stand. Like, they're struggling as much as anyone else, but they're like, you know what? We can work with this. They've always been kind of independent hunter types, and they're actually getting on all right. They don't really need that much help. It's really the merchants and the sailors and a lot of those trade routes and shipping things that have really suffered, especially after the final days. You've lost a lot of your fleet. You don't have as many traders coming to Thavnair, so that's where the suffering has really been concentrated.
Yep. So with that, we decide that we're going to help rebuild the infrastructure by buying more boats, by, you know, trying to hire people to actually sail back and forth with goods and
your standard government investment in the ports in this case. Yep.
So because we are working on, you know, improving the situation with trade, who better to name this after than a very helpful and kind-hearted merchant who unfortunately had some poor circumstances, you know, and he ended up, you know, becoming a blasphemy.
Yeah.
Remember who he was, not what he became. So we end up naming it, or it ends up getting named the Kalzal Foundation.
Yeah, Kalzal, that merchant who we encountered early in Endwalker, who was the first to transform when his attempts to rebuild his business were met with a complete crushing of the dream. Like, he had been he had this unfortunate ending that, as several of the people pointed out, could have happened to any number of us. He was just the one who was unlucky, and rather than have that be his legacy, having him be the name and face of this initiative to revitalize those ports, a plan where a portion of the profits would be dedicated to orphanages for the children who lost their families in the final days.
Yeah,
to make Thavnair into a place where no one has to live in squalor, as they said.
Yeah, it ends up being an amazing thing, you know, because these merchants will get, you know, a huge investment in capital so they can improve their stuff. And in order to take that, they just have to give a small percentage of it back. And kids are helped by that.
Yeah, it was interesting to have this plot line at a time where I know in the real world there's been a lot of debate about what the role of government should be in making a better society, about what role business has, about all these things like that, how these different things, how they can work together, or what they each should be responsible for. So it was really interesting to explore that idea in this. So I know that's one that's front and center for a lot of people right now.
So what I'm getting out of it is that we should all be, you know, all government stuff should be taken care of by video gamers.
I can think of worse plans, honestly.
Yeah, like the current one we have now.
Look, I'm just saying, you put a bunch of over-optimizers in charge of a budget, you're probably going to get some kind of good result, maybe.
I mean, it can't be any worse than we got now.
Yeah. But so,
anyway.
nice little... But so nice little scene there, getting to see a lot of, again, not just the heroic victory over the monsters, but the hard work of policy and nation building and trying to figure out what we value and how we want to move forward.
It was very heartwarming to see, that somebody in charge of a large nation cared that deeply about, their people.
Yeah, and this is one thing that we've seen with the character of Ritra and Varshan over and over, that very much a lot of like sacrificing his own desires and his own interests because he loves the nation that he watches over and that he's helped build so much, and that he wants to, he loves and cares for these people and wants to do what will be best for them. I mean, back in the dungeon of Vanaspati, where like a lot of those blasphemies were attacking Vritra, he didn't want to attack them because he still saw them as children of Thavnair.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting to see that love kind of shining through, really beautiful. So while we've got that going on, Y'shtola, of course, has been investigating the Void Gate, has received special permission for that as her interest, and her investigation leads her to Sharlayan, where the restricted sections of Numenon hold century-old research notes from the Hanish alchemists who originally studied that Void Gate.
Yeah, we learn about that when we were talking with what's her name, the Akasodra
Nidana?
Yes, her. Thank you.
Yeah.
She tells us that because I believe all of the alchemy in Radzat Han and in Thavnair, a lot of it stemmed from some of that initial research from this group of people, correct?
Right. And
so she's familiar with the
discussed
names of everything of the people who did all this, and she I believe is this correct, that she recalls that that they had taken a copy of their research to Sharlayan to have the forum go through that and see what they thought of their plan.
Partly that, but also partly, even back then, Sharlayan was seen as this big center of knowledge and wisdom and learning, and so it's kind of like hey, this is something we've discovered, we want to share with you. We've seen a lot of, the alchemists at the Great Work and throughout Razatan, very devoted to their scholarship, very enthusiastic about it, where Sharlayan had a lot of hey, we want to keep these things under our head. Hanish alchemists are very much about, we want to share this information, we want to spread it all around and see what everyone can do with it. So of course they brought it to Sharlayan, and the forum promptly classified it and put it in the restricted section.
But because of
once we see what's in it, it kind of makes sense, but that's a little bit further along.
Yep. Go ahead, continue.
So yeah, with a little bit of help from Scholark Monteshane as well as Forchanal, which it was really nice to get to have some more interactions with Forchanal in a non-adversarial context.
I mean, he's not a complete asshole.
Yeah, they still wanted justifications for why we wanted this kind of restricted knowledge, but both of them, the Scholark and Forchanal, seemed very sympathetic to Y'shtola's desire to tease apart these mysteries of the void, to understand the nature of all these things. It really spoke to a lot of that Sharlayan spirit of inquiry.
And it still required a vote of the forum, and fortunately, because of what we have done and how we've helped
that whole save the universe thing.
Yeah, it gave us a little bit of cred. So they let us. They let us go take a look, and it was really kind of interesting to see how they did that. They just basically programmed or said that to the mammoth that, hey, these people are allowed, and then beep boop, we go.
One wonders how Graha Tia snuck in there, given how tight the security is on it.
Well, I mean, I can see it. It didn't seem like it was extremely, foolproof.
I mean, I guess, yeah, if he was using a float spell, hop into one of the open areas and get down to the lower levels. Oh,
yeah, maybe he floated up the stacks and maybe could sneak behind it.
Whatever it is, it's a lot easier to get in when you're invited.
It is much.
And yeah, Y'shtola, of course, promptly gets distracted by the first tome she lays a hand on. So it's up to us to search through the stacks of the restricted section, eventually finding a research journal discussing a void scent known as an atomos. Now, some of you may remember that from the Crystal Tower series. Legacy players may remember that from the madness that was going on just before Dalamud landed, where atomos were appearing at aetheryte camps and spawning all manner of demons and other void scent.
Lovely.
Good times. And in fact, they actually reference those events when talking about it afterwards. But the journal describes that an atomos is a living creature that has absorbed a planar fissure into its own body, and thus it can exert some amount of control over it, turning that fissure into a functioning void gate. The journal also outlines a method for creating an artificial atomos. Now, this, of course, is incredibly dangerous, forbidden knowledge of the highest order, which is why Nidana is delighted when Y'shtola puts it into her hand. It's like, this is forbidden knowledge. Thank you.
Let's go.
Oh, gotta love that spirit of inquiry, even if I'm reasonably sure it's going to be the cause of the simultaneous 8th, 9th, and 11th calamities.
What about the 10th?
Yeah, that's going to be part of the weirdness that happens with this. Oh.
We don't talk about the 10th.
Yeah, but so the Alchemists of the Great Work, very excited for this new project, so they set to work on making an artificial atomos. And meanwhile, Y'shtola wants to do a little more preliminary research and fashions a pair of arcane familiars in order to test the influences of the void. The gate, of course, yeah, the gate, of course, being way too small to let any of us through, but can totally handle a miniature arcane familiar. And yes, using an incantation that she notes she really wishes her 10-year-old self had thought a little bit more about how it was going to end. Full-on magical girl sequence. Our companion staring at her, Estinian wondering if she's become possessed. Y'shtola begging us to banish it from our memories and having all the hallmarks of never going to live this down, and we could possibly just bring this up anytime we want if we want to get flared. But
or frozen or
yeah, but we have two arcane familiars. For those of you who remember in Matoya's Relic, that Nixie, the water spirit, that is the type of familiar that Y'shtola had developed, and I believe if you do run it with Y'shtola as a trust, she actually does make some remarks that suggest she was the one who made those as well. But so, gives... with those two spirits, gives one of them a warding scale on the basis that given that it protects from the powerful energies of a primal that lead to tempering, that maybe it will have some effect on the energies of the void as well.
I believe this was a slightly modified one that's supposed to help against the negative or the dark spirits.
It might have been, and I think there's also some remarks that they would need to continue to revise the design because the stuff of the 13th is a bit different.
Yes.
But it's good enough for a preliminary experiment.
Exactly. Yep, they sent in one with a warding scale, one without as a control.
Yep. We stand guard just in case anything terrible comes out while we're waiting for this. And a short time later, the two familiars return, the one with the warding scale seeming hale, hearty, and largely unaffected, and the one without already having become a corrupted, twisted creature well on its way to becoming a void scent. So clearly, this is going to, there's going to need to be a lot more preparation than just getting the gate open and sauntering through. And yeah, in this case, we end up deciding to create a protective case for the warding scale, in part because if the warding scale itself becomes damaged, this can lower its effectiveness. And the scale that we did use for the test already starting to show some small amounts of etheric corruption where there are very small scratches and dings.
Yep.
So between that job, which we hand off to the Ironworks, and the development of the artificial atomos, there's clearly a lot that we need to do to prepare for this trip to the void. Still, Ritra is finally starting to allow himself to hope that his sister might be saved from her banishment to the void. And there are again a couple really touching scenes where they talk about how, again, we've seen so much about Ritra's love for Thavnir, all that he'd sacrificed for it, and how after all that they want him to, like, he's done so much for them, they want to do something for him, and they want him to think of his own and to give him permission to to do this thing for himself, to try to recover his sister. Now, what we're going to find is anyone's guess. I mean, we've got Azdaha has been in there for over 5,000 years, since it was before the fall of the Allegan Empire that this happened. Granted, she's also a dragon. The warding scales are based off of the protective power of dragon scales, and they are very hardy beings. We even saw a tempered Tiamat still somewhat having her mind her own, and it seemed like the tempering process worked somewhat differently with a creature as powerful as a dragon. So it's unclear what we might find there, but it's something where, hey, we've what started as a simple treasure hunting trip has turned into this bigger thing of reaching out to the through the void and this kind of final frontier world.
Yep. So some questions that are popping up. I mean, one, how does dark ether affect wormkin and dragons? Because you gotta assume it's going to affect them differently, because I think for the most part, all of the dragons are affected, have very different effects to ether than a lot of other races out there.
Yeah, the dragons are not native to Aetheris. In fact, we did get to see their homeworld and all this, and we had known even long before that they'd come from another world and kind of made a deal with Eidolon.
Yep, so they may not even be negatively affected by the 13th. And it's
or
dark.
It might be affecting in some strange way. There's also the fact that even if the ether hasn't done it, she's been sealed up there for 5,000 years just by herself. That can't be great.
No. And then the second piece that we have not yet touched on, there were some scenes in between some of our adventures here.
I did not bring them up because we personally did not run into them, so our characters don't know yet.
Exactly.
But there's definitely some behind the scenes stuff happening.
Yep. Meanwhile, we get to see a dark armored character sitting in a throne somewhere in a very dark area. I mean, one can assume it's the 13th.
Yeah. There's four things with elemental aspects referred to as the Throne of Earth, Throne of Fire, with voices issuing from each. The comments they make do strongly imply that this is happening somewhere in the void.
Yep. So there's this dark character. There's four other elemental characters that are all discussing these things that they are noticing that are happening. So a lot of foreshadowing and probably introducing us to our next antagonist, but we don't know much about him beyond that.
Right. Longtime fans of the series have enough clues to guess a couple other things about it. The design is familiar. The four elemental thrones that we're speaking have particular speech patterns that are reminiscent of stuff from the earlier Final Fantasy series. So for those who are familiar, for those who have not played Final Fantasy IV, I would go ahead and give that one a spin, get a little bit more detail on some of these things, get a little bit more hints as to the foreshadowing that's being dropped as to what we might be seeing in the future.
So you're thinking that it's going to be loosely based off of the four elemental fiends from 4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
like the Earth one had the exact same speech patterns that Scarmillion had.
Okay.
And the model of the black armored character is the exact same one that's used for a particular character in like Dissidia and the like.
Starting with a G, and ending with an Olbez.
Yes, like they had hinted heavily at the Final Fantasy IV connection with the whole trip to the moon thing, and now it's starting to seem like maybe the parallels run deeper than we initially expected.
Interesting. I was actually kind of wondering if it was going back to Final Fantasy 1 with the four Chaos Fiends.
I mean, the four elemental archfiends in Final Fantasy IV were also in and of themselves a little bit of a callback to that. So it's kind of a thing where at some point, okay, where does the one reference end and the next begin?
But yeah, I mean, my concern about that particular idea was the fact that we already have Stranger of Paradise, which is a retelling of the beginnings of Final Fantasy 1. So maybe we didn't need to jump that also into Final Fantasy 14, but you know, it might be a good tie-in for some sort of crossover event.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But yeah, just these speech patterns in particular, I've seen the various localizations they did for FF4, and the speech patterns that the Elemental Thrones were using very much line up with the ones for the Fiends from 4.
Okay, I probably didn't pick that up nearly as much because I played with the Japanese audio, so maybe I missed some of that.
Well, also just in the text, like the way it's written, the way it's on talk. Like this wasn't an audio. This was just like the
okay, I see what you're saying.
Like those kinds of speech patterns.
Okay.
Like the way the text is written, the fact that like the Earth one tends to kind of like has sibilant hissing S's.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of the ways of speaking. This is more like suggestive of and not confirmed, but it at least matches a pattern that would match those 4. And given that the black armored character is pretty much a dead ringer for Golbez as depicted in the Dissidia series, it seems reasonable that they're playing around with that idea a bit.
So are the Lunarians going to come into play on this? I mean, we're going to have some, Loporrits come over and hang out with us and help us out.
Who knows?
I'm sure they could figure something out.
But those spiky bits of the helmet are just very stylized ears. Giant Loporrit boss.
Yes, confirmed.
You heard it here first and last.
Yeah, never to be heard of again. Which is probably for the better.
But yeah, a little bit of like getting back to roots in terms of that adventuring, treasure hunting, exploring these things where for a while we've been a lot of the stuff we've been doing is where we have some understanding of the nature of the threat, where we're learning extra details, but we kind of had the base story. And now we're starting with something where, again, starting a little from scratch, where we're learning these basic stuff, but we're still kind of newbies to the topic. So there's a little bit of that like spirit of adventure and inquiry in the dungeons, in the treasure hunting, in the plot. It's not a full-on reset, but it does feel like we've gotten back a little bit to that spirit of, as the patch title is called, a newfound adventure.
Yep. I have to say, I did actually enjoy their explanation of how a void scent actually gets from the void over to the source.
Yes.
Like using the gargoyles as an example.
Yep. This was one that the various pieces of it have appeared in all sorts of supplemental bits or all sorts of side quests, such that it wasn't necessarily telling us something that we didn't already know if you are a very obsessive lore monger who has gone through and done all stuff, yada, yada, yada. But much like these bit in Shadowbringers, where the Crystal Exarch was explaining the reflections and putting all that information together in an easy to understand and digest package. This one was a really good introduction to what's going on with the void, how the void affects our world, how this all ties in with the idea of the reflections. So for the lore fans in the audience, there's a lot to get from that.
And it was nice to
I
see
give it
them...
another 2 weeks before we start having Void Scent role-playing characters. Wait, sorry, negative 2 weeks. What? If you're not a sexy whatever the current monster is, are you even role-playing?
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
So yeah, that was... Patch 6.1. I'm actually very, very excited to see where the story leads us.
Mhm.
You know,
We also, partway through that, we do get a call from the students of Baldesion to investigate another issue, but that's a side story that we can talk about a little bit later.
yep. Lots of stuff going on in the game. It's, you know, dying game. You know, who's playing this game anymore? But
I'm still getting queues when I try to log in, so.
yep, there's still queues, but you know, PvP is still popping, and you know, a lot of people are still interested in the game, even though the ultimate race has been won. Somebody actually, I think they beat it in like just a few days, which is very nice. Congratulations to.
Yeah, it was actually one of the smaller teams that a lot of people I don't think were expecting.
Which is cool. I mean, that's, you know, everybody's getting a chance to you know, get out there and enjoy the hard content. So congratulations to everybody who has beaten the newest ultimate
Yeah.
duty. Duty.
Dragon Song's reprise. Yeah, and I know the Savage rating is still going. Spender's group finally got to P4S this week.
You know, one thing that I did not put in the gaming community news that I've just thought of now, maybe we should talk about it a little bit here.
Oh no.
Are you
Go ahead. I know what this is about to be about, but
are you sure?
Boy.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about all the bans.
Yeah, it's a thing. Short version, especially with the Ultimate, with the a lot of stuff about third-party tools has been in discussion again. Yoshi P came out with his own comment about it. I think in this one, in part because Ultimate Race is, of course, big attention draw, big thing that everyone's to, and then you had people who were data mining and circulating cutscenes from later in the fight. And I think when it got to that level, that's where they was really starting to get upset, because it was supposed to be this thing where they've talked before about the Ultimates being kind of something that's for the audience to participate in too, and with this one, you have this story being told and then an alternate history being spun, and so at least part of the draw, I think, was going to be finding out how this new story develops and having those elements be kind of surprising. And the fact that people sort of knew how the story would end well before they'd even gotten to the alternate history part was disappointing, to say the least. So Yoshi P did make a statement about that. That's led to a lot of arguing about third-party add-ons, other tools, data mining, a lot of your usual controversy on this.
And basically what's ended up happening from this is anybody who is displaying any type of third-party mod with, you know, while they're streaming the game are getting bans. I mean,
Yeah,
and it's hitting a lot of the big streamers, including, I believe, Asmongold got hit with a ban because he was using ACT.
Yeah. And it may be I feel like it's one of those things where they're never going to say, yeah, it's fine. They're never going to officially say that. But for a while, it seemed like they were happy to just be like, if people weren't being too blatant about it, to just let it go under the radar a bit. And it seems like they're a lot more zero tolerance about it right now because of all this.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I mean, I have utilized, you know, and looked at third-party tools to see if it's something that would affect or improve my gameplay, and I decided it wasn't something that was for me. So I don't utilize them. But, you know, some people want to know, especially when you're looking at Savage progression, because everything is so tight and you need to have that extra 1 or 2 DPS, and that can actually make or break your fight. People wanted to know where they were actually sitting. So the fact that the game
or to have the call outs for those things.
The call outs I can see being a bannable thing because it's actually it's dumbing everything down and it's taking away from the work that the devs have done.
The thing I would say to that is they added Stone Sky Sea for that purpose. It doesn't give you data in the granularity that people might want necessarily, but that has been their thing for, okay, if you want to know if you have enough, if you can clear this, you have enough. I know that players want the numerical thing. I understand all the reasons they do. But I think that the devs have been fairly clear that that's not something they're interested in providing.
Which is
And
sad because they were talking back in the beginning when they released it. That was one of the things that they wanted to do, was release an API that they could have players connect to and have these mods in there that is completely sanctioned by the dev team, but it was never provided.
Yeah, I think part of that was development priorities, and maybe also a little bit of seeing, okay, what have people done with the ones that they did have, even if they were not necessarily official sanctioned ones. Like there was it's an open secret, you don't make a big deal of it, but they're not necessarily going to come down as hard. And again, just because it ended up having this big effect, this thing where spoilers were out for this thing that was supposed to be this really big story piece and all that, that's something that seems to have caused them to re-examine their stance and, at least for the moment, come down a bit harder on it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess I understand that aspect of it. You don't want story to be spoiled because people want to experience it on their own terms.
And also, these particular fights are developed in part with the story and with the audience's reaction in mind.
Yep. So,
like, there's probably going to be someone data mining doing type of thing, but it's a difference between it being, okay, there's like a whispered thing that you have to go looking for in the right channels, and, oh, hey, this thing just got plastered all over Reddit and Twitter.
Yeah. So, because of those types of things, they've had to really tighten it down. But
right now, the policy is a lot stronger towards banning for that.
If you are showing your parses on screen, you are getting banned, because that is video proof that you have been using third-party tools.
And it does seem like they have a lot more people paying attention now.
Yep. So if you're gonna use the tools, don't talk about using the tools.
Yeah. Oh. And yeah, again, they're never going to give official approval for using those ones. Like, if they develop their own in-house version, like something within the official API or whatever, that would be one thing. But they're never going to officially say this is okay. But you can see differences in how strongly they enforce it, in the types of language they use in describing and talking about it, and they definitely are going on a much harder line stance for it right now.
I would like to see Square Enix, reach out to some of these third-party developers and say, hey, maybe do some type of just to open up discussion of how to. I know it's
tricky for a lot of reasons.
Oh,
I would love to see it too, but just from a business perspective, from a software security, there's a lot of things that make that more complicated.
I think a lot of the MMO players are going to say this is going to be the biggest thing that's going to hold back Final Fantasy XIV from becoming the biggest MMO out there. I mean, WoW.
It's already doing pretty damn well.
It's doing great, but I mean, WoW is still going to be that pinnacle, that the thing that people are going to be, reaching towards, because it has that support of the developers to use those types of mods, those UI enhancements, things like that. Yeah. I mean, the
other thing I would mention is just in terms of like the community. I know there can be concerns about, like, one of the ones that came up, especially for instance with parsing, is okay, some people are using this for their own thing, but then some people use this as a justification to be toxic to others. And while toxic is going to toxic, you don't necessarily want to be handing them more rope to do it with.
No, and I understand that. You want to make sure that you're not utilizing these tools to harass other players, and that's something that has been out there since the beginning of the game.
But yeah, just with it, there's a lot of different competing interests here. And I don't think we can necessarily say, oh, this is what would or wouldn't happen as a result, because we've had a lot of unexpected consequences from a lot of these. Yep.
So, I mean, it's just something we wanted.
Game design is fascinating, just, oh my gosh, so many factors.
We just wanted to throw it out there again because it has become it's become a talking point in the community.
I just wanted to get back to my delightful memes. I did not need to see yet another think piece about someone's feelings on this.
Yep. I guess I just wanted to get that out
I'm
there.
Old Man Seyrr, and get off my lawn.
Well, we've had our discussion. I mean, and we have talked about mods in previous episodes as well. So if you want to check out the backlog out at phoenixdownradio.com, by all means, go check that out too.
Also, gays with your body hair mods, you do you. Shine on, you crazy diamonds. Well, every once in a while, you'll see a thing on one of the glamour repositories where it's like, okay, your Hrothgar clearly has a body hair mod that you forgot to turn off before submitting this screenshot.
Whoops. Well, hopefully they didn't get banned.
I mean, it was just a glamour thing, so I think that's probably less likely.
There have been that type of mods that have been caused people on Twitter to get their 14 accounts banned as well.
Oof.
So
okay,
it's not just ACT and parsers and mechanics callouts that are caught, and then the data mining that are causing people to get banned. You know, the third party glamour mods, the people who are bringing in their own types of glamour items, the nude mods, the hair mods. All of that. I
have never quite understood why you would want to run around in Eorzea where everyone just has constant raging erections. Like, at a certain point, that just starts to feel grotesque.
Well, if they want to do that, they should maybe play Second Life, but or
that still feels grotesque.
Or isn't, or maybe Cyberpunk, because I think they had a lot of dildos in Cyberpunk too, didn't they?
Like that stops being titillating at some point. It's like, yep, there's another person, and there's their giant schlong. Yep, that sure is a thing.
It sure is a thing. But like I said, those people who have been caught using those or screenshotting those out on Twitter, and if SE sees it and their accounts are linked or they can easily be ascertained, they can get banned too. I mean,
whatever your feelings on this, we love you, dear listeners. We want to keep doing stuff with you. Please don't get yourself banned.
Please. Yep. I know it may seem like it sucks, but like I said, just for now.
Whatever your feelings are on it, don't get yourself banned.
Because that would be even worse. So.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode.
Sorry, one of my retainers brought back a white peach, and that looks so much like a butt. Butts. Phoenix Down Radio, the serious podcast.
Yeah, well, it is Phoenix Down Radio After Dark. Well, it's not quite
dark
yet.
It's not even close to sunset here.
Well, there maybe, but here it's starting to get darker, so.
There we go.
But that is going to go ahead and do it for this episode. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like, subscribe, or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever your preferred podcatcher is. And if possible, leave us a rating or review. It helps other people to find our show and lets us know how we're doing. If you really dig the show, please consider subscribing to us here at twitch.tv/PhoenixDownRadio, where you get access to a number of subscriber-only emotes and badges. Or you can go out to patreon.com/PhoenixDownRadio and support us out there, like our benevolent overlord, Aurori Fenrir, or our shadowy foreign investor, Tibby and Salts. All proceeds go towards growing the show, cover things like hosting costs, allow us to improve and upgrade our equipment, as well as do some fun things like contests and giveaways. But any kind of support, whether it's likes, emails, tweets, retweets, subs, donations, follows, whatever you got, we greatly appreciate it. We really love interacting with you guys and the rest of the community. Like I said earlier, you can go to our website, phoenixdownradio.com, if you want to listen to our backlog of episodes, or check out some of our past articles that we posted out there when we had more time to post things like that. Maybe someday we'll get back into it again.
I can't believe I used to say in our copious spare time as if I didn't have spare time. Now I really don't have spare time.
Tell me about it.
What the hell?
Tell me about it. But if you have comments, questions, things you'd like to see on the website, you can always email us, podcast@phoenixdownradio.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at PHXDNRadio. And you can always check out our Facebook group out at facebook.com/PhoenixDownRadio. Shout out, sir.
Shout out to the 7 student teachers and 8 library branch managers who actually managed to work with each other and accommodate each other enough that I was able to make this library summer camp schedule work.
Yay.
Oh my god, it was a logistical nightmare. But we made it work, and we have an actual plan, and the kids are going to get to learn stuff about coding. It'll be great.
Woo.
So shout out to all 15 of you. You were really good about being responsive. You were accommodating when I said, hey, do you think you could shift this by a week? I love you. You are the wind beneath my wings. Never make me do this again.
Did you ever know you're my hero?
I try not to think about it.
And everything I would like to be? Sorry.
Okay, that feels demonstrably false.
Anyway,
you can find me. I know. You can find me on Twitter at FF14 Seyrr. That's FFXIV SEYRR. You can also find me on the Phoenix Down Radio Discord, which Klauss is going to drop a link in the chat, and you can also get to that from our website. Always love to see you. We just had a couple new folks drop in. Always love to chat with our listeners, find out what's been going on in their lives. You're good people. We love you.
For the most part.
We love you, and then there's Nick Nar.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Oh, we love you too, Nick Nar.
Sometimes.
How about you, Klauss? Who you want to shout out this week?
This week, I want to shout out my D&D group. Like I said, it was really awesome to get in person with you guys and hang out, eat tacos, drink alcohol, blow up things, and just have a good time.
Ooh.
Fortunately, didn't have to banish any dice. It was just nice to get together and just do stupid shit with friends again.
Yeah.
But smartly, we weren't doing it, just hanging out, and it was a good time. Hoping we can do it again. Like I said, a lot of people are doing their D&D sessions over Discord because of, one, it's a lot easier to get together that way. And two, there is some areas where it's more difficult to get together because of things like COVID, or if you have family who are prone or what's the word I'm thinking of here?
Immunocompromised?
Yeah, that'll work. So, but yeah, it's nice to be able to get together with friends, some of whom I haven't seen in quite a while. And then some who are new friends who are part of this group. So that's always a nice thing as well. So
I'll also mention online D&D. It is a lot easier to do stuff with maps and minis. Some of the platforms for that, my friend group, they have one where it's like, as you're moving through it, it automatically adjusts all the stuff so you can see what your character's able to see. It's so much nicer for that.
We've been looking into that, but there's a lot of work that has to go into it. You either have to put all of the parameters into that software yourself, or you have to run a campaign that's already been input into that. So
there are worse things to do than to run a pre-published adventure.
Yeah, but I mean, in this case, like I said, we're running a first edition AD&D campaign that was written by Gary Gygax.
Man, back when THACO was just a distant dream.
No, there's still THACO.
I thought that didn't come until second edition.
No, I think there's THACO in there. There's THACO in there as well. Because there's still, armor classes and all that stuff too. So,
armor class was a thing. THACO, I think.
To hit armor class 0, because your armor still goes further down.
It's at a negative armor class is better.
Exactly. So first edition and second edition both had THACO.
What a stupid, confusing Gordian knot.
I don't know. If it's what you're used to, it's what you're used to. But I agree, it's a little bit weird after experiencing it in third edition and beyond. We
played second edition in high school, and just trying to make sense of that ended up scaring away so many newbies. Yeah, that's why you just need to have one person who really understands it. Your DM, generally, they'll help you to convert your hit rolls, so it keeps things moving. Though I will say, the nice thing about being in person is you have to be a lot more. You can't fudge those rolls. I mean, unless everybody agrees to utilize an online dice roller or something like that,
I don't know. You just need to be with people you trust, I guess. So,
I mean, in general, that feels like a good move. Don't spend time around people you don't like. Curate your friend groups.
Yep. But anyway, shout out to them. It was a great time. Looking forward to doing it again, hopefully soon, whether it's on Discord or in person. Good time. Nick Nar is a part of that group, so we can't talk too bad about him, but we do talk bad about him. Because, well, he plays a character that we make fun of because he's a lot stronger than he is smart.
Oh, that's always a fun archetype.
Yes.
Not everyone can be the party face. Someone needs to be the muscle.
Yep. And we make fun of him a little bit, and it's just all in good fun. It's a good time. I'm playing a very different character type from what I have played in the past. I'm actually playing a druid.
Ooh.
So having to do the whole true neutral thing is very different. Like the previous one, it was a second edition, and I was playing a paladin.
Oh man, paladins were so hard to roll up back then.
Well, it
they had like some insane stat requirements, and that was before point buy was a regular thing.
Mm-hmm. And it also helps when you roll a 100 when pulling from the deck of many things.
Oh,
so basically,
Ender of campaigns.
Well, no, I ended up, like I said, I ended up getting...
The deck of many things is an Ender of campaigns.
Oh, yes, 100%. But like I said, pulling a +5 Holy Avenger out of it, it kind of changed me from being a regular fighter to a paladin. So,
oh yeah,
very nice. But I guess fortunately I already had the stat requirements needed to become a paladin in that case. So, and it was one of the last characters to die in an Under Mountain campaign.
Nice.
So, actually, I think we ended up going somewhere else when my character ended up biffing it. But anyway, that's enough table talk for this. So, that also covers my shout out. So thank you very much. So for my co-host Seyrr Tomono, I am Klauss Nightbringer, wishing everybody a wonderful evening. I'm gonna hit the right button this time, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Phoenix Down Radio is a production of PhoenixDownRadio.com and Illusion Productions. Final Fantasy XIV and Eorzea are trademarks of Square Enix. In-game content for Phoenix Down Radio is the copyright of Square Enix. Opening music for Phoenix Down Radio is provided by Guilty Gear Rock You. Check out the Metal Chocobo theme cover and many other music videos at youtube.com/Guilty Gear Rock You. Closing music for this episode is provided by Guitar Wanker 90. Please check out their full version of Matoya's Cave and other rock video game covers at youtube.com/Guitar Wanker 90. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of Phoenix Down Radio and its hosts and do not reflect the views of Square Enix.